Hello, friends. My name is Brian Foreman with the Campbell University Center for Church and Community, and it is my pleasure today to introduce to you the Reverend Dr. Abdue Knox from Greater Bethel AME Zion Church in the Charlotte, North Carolina. Abdue's a good friend to Campbell. He's got a degree from the Divinity School there, and we're proud of him as an alumnus, and glad that he's taken some time to be with us today. So, Abdue, let me just ask you a quick question, man. What's good?
You know, it's going to sound crazy to say this, but in a global pandemic, uh, economic unrest, um, almost in famine conditions in some communities, I say life is good right now. And the reason I say that is because we know so many people who are sick, but we're not. We know so many people who are out of work, but we're not. We know so many people who are struggling and going through, but we're not. So what's good right now? Life is pretty good.
Yeah. You know, it's fascinating. So many people are stressed out. They're anxious. They're focusing on fear and scarcity and all those things that we tend to buy into. And you're basically saying, hey, we got to stay balanced and recognize the blessings that we have.
That's right. That's right.
It,
Because it could be worse.
it could be weird. I'm guessing that means you're a man that has toilet paper in your house.
I have a lot of toilet paper.
That's how a man can say that life is good. Yeah, but I mean, you know, the funny thing about the whole toilet paper thing, and then I heard earlier this week that there's going to be a run on Ziploc bags because people are starting to hoard meat because they're worried about meat shortages and everything else. And there's just this sense of scarcity in our world, and we run towards that. As a minister, how do you help your people stop and take a minute to take a deep breath and say, God, I'm just grateful?
Mm-hmm. I preached Sunday from Psalm 23, the very first verse, and I think the title was When You've Had Enough. Mm. And so I try to stress to my people and others that we have enough. We even pray this, Lord, bless us for our daily bread. You know, we have enough for today. We have enough for our families. We don't need to hoard. And I'm guilty of it because I think I have about 60 rolls of toilet paper. But I just a note to clear it up. I already had toilet paper before this started, so I didn't go out and storm the shelves for toilet paper. But God gives us what we need, and He blesses us with our occasional wants. And so I try to stress to our people, just thank God for today. Tomorrow's going to be all right. We're going to prepare for it. Tomorrow's going to be all right. But let's focus on today. And with my 60, 70 rolls, if you need some, I got you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's been remarkable to me that not only in the midst of all of this fear, also the stories of people stepping up to help one another, to care for one another, to be the hands and the feet of Christ to one another. I mean, have you seen some stories specifically in the community where your church is, where people are doing this for one another?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in our own church, I had a lady call me about 3 weeks ago, and she said she was budgeting her money and she had some extra money, and she wanted to prepare a small dinner for about 20 people. And then she called me later in the day and said she checked her account and she received a stimulus check. So because she received a stimulus check, she wanted to prepare dinner for all of the seniors in our church. So we were able to call the seniors and say, hey, come by to church on Sunday at a particular time and pick up a meal. I see instances like that. I see instances where people are just going to the here in Charlotte. There are a lot of transient people that live in the hotels, extended stay hotels. I've seen people over these past few weeks that have taken groceries to the extended stay hotels to be a blessing to people. The face mask. I see them giving face masks to our first responders, to police officers, to the nurses, even the mail carriers. So I see a devotion to duty in our people now,
Mm.
to not just the religious institutions, but to the people as a whole. I see much more giving. I see much more loving society now.
Yeah. So as we're now in what, week 7, week 8, depending on where you are when you're watching this. Uh, yeah, I told somebody the other day. I said I have day and I have night. I don't know what day it
That's
is,
it.
but I
Yeah,
know
that's
there's light and there's dark, and that's pretty much what I'm living in, right? Um, but at some point, governors are starting to relax some rules. Are starting to talk about reopening the economy. Talking about, and there's pressure for churches to reopen and all of those things. Are you doing anything to prepare your folks for that, or are you doing anything to prepare for that yourself?
we we're still kind of a one day at a time situation. My heart's desire was that we would have an outside piece on Mother's Day,
Mm.
since we've been cleared to worship outside. But when they built our property, they didn't build it thinking in 2020 we need to prepare to have outdoor worship, and so it's just not conducive for us. I want us to come back and worship in place, but I want us to be safe when we do it. So we're looking at some things whenever we do open the doors. We've already cut out the handshaking. We've cut out actually physically passing the offering plates. Um, all that stuff. We don't hold hands during the doxology. We don't do that. We won't do that anymore. But we're actually looking at staggering the pews. So if you're sitting on the second pew, nobody's going to sit on the third pew. Only families sitting together, not just people together. With the space of our sanctuary, I think it can seat about 500 people. If we have 200 to 300 in worship, it's not going to work. So we're we're possibly going to add a second service so that there is room for everybody to be socially distant, and not, we can still be in worship, but not cause any problems.
Yeah, yeah. So there are difficulties that are going to come along with all of this. What are some hopes that you see coming out of this, both as church leader, so in ministry? What are some hopes you see coming out of that? But also, a minute ago you alluded to seeing a new level of kindness in humanity and the way we're caring for one another. What's your hope for sort of the community? So on one hand, your hope for the church, and on the other hand, church hope for the community. And believe me, brother, I know as well as anybody that sometimes you can't separate those two.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not a bad thing either. But
I really hope that we as a church, and not just my local church, but we as a church, that we will not go back to business as usual. It's amazing how I still have colleagues who are resistant to change. I still have colleagues who, if we're not worshiping in person, we're not worshiping. I hope that we can, and I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I'm one that I did not like to televise and do the online, because if I can look at you on the computer, I have no need to come into the church. And so I've been against that. But over these past however many weeks, God has changed my mind. So I'm hoping that we as a church can embrace and move to meet the people where they are. Community looks different in 2020 than it did, 20 years ago. And so our community is not just those that attend our church, not just those that live around our church, but those that our church is able to reach. And that may be someone that's thousands of miles away. So I'm hoping that we embrace the change of community. I hope that we don't get comfortable and get back to normal and forget what we just went through. I hope we don't get comfortable and forget about those that, even though we were not economically affected, forget about those who were. Forget about those families whose children had to be homeschooled, but they didn't have internet, or they didn't have computers or tablets. I don't want us to get to a point where we forget what we just went through. And then we'll be like the children of Israel on this continuing cycle.
Yeah, because I mean, you're alluding to something that I've been paying attention to, and it's the fact that we are living very different versions of this pandemic, depending on what political leaning you have, what news source you have, what your socioeconomic status is, what level of privilege you have, right? I mean, we're all living such very different experiences of the pandemic. So when people say we're in this together, well, sure we are, but we're not in this the same, right? Which has really been fascinating to me. But this has highlighted or exposed some of those things that that we can't continue to hide from, and gives us a space to step into. Now, a lot of churches aren't comfortable with that. When you're talking to other clergy or clergy friends or whoever may be out there watching this recording, what advice or encouragement do you have for them to step into those spaces bravely and boldly and prophetically?
My word to everybody is the same. We just have to be open. We have to be open, and we can't be so stuck and stringent that we don't want to bend. Because what ends up happening, let me see if I have something there. I have this letter opener here, and it's not going to bend. If I keep trying to make it bend, it's going to break. Mm-hmm. So the only thing I can do with this is open a letter, because it's not going to bend. However, this cord here, my desk is a mess, but this cord here, I can bend it. Mm-hmm. And I can bend, and this cord can still be functional. And so we in ministry, we have to be able to bend. We have to adapt. And if we're not adapting, our people are missing out. I don't want to shamelessly plug my ministry, but we have a saying that right now we're the church scattered, but we want to remain the church gathered. And so we're doing that through these means. So the church has to continue. Even now, the people of the church, they still have needs, and the church has to continue to minister. Yes. Under these circumstances. So we have to minister through Zoom. If we have to minister through conference call, if we have to minister through Facebook Live, we still have to minister. People still have a need of ministry.
Yeah. So you talked about that God's been showing you some new things about how the church gathers, the role of technology, all of those things. Do you think there are tools that you are using now out of necessity that you'll continue using once this is all over, so to speak, because of
Absolutely. I'm going to be a Zoom expert very soon. I just got off at 12 o'clock. I had Zoom Bible study, and I had my PowerPoint going, and we were sharing the screen and doing all of this. I love it, and my people love it. And so, yeah, we're going to continue to do that.
Are you seeing that there are people who haven't been able to physically be in the space of the church that are able to interact this way?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard a really amazing story the other day. A pastor was saying that they started a Bible study, a Zoom Bible study, and a few members who had been stalwarts 20, 30 years ago in the church, but had been shut-ins for basically the last 10, 15 years, saw each other for the first time.
Wow.
Like 5, 6 years.
Wow.
And that this was giving them the opportunity to not only to see one another and have conversation together, but to study scripture together, to worship together. And he said he just, after the call was over, he said he just sat there and wept, right? Mm-hmm. So much what we hear in culture and church may have this problem has oftentimes been we can't X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
When this is all over, there's not a whole lot of space for we can't.
Not at all. Mm-hmm. Not at all.
Shouldn't have been in the first place, right?
Exactly. we had to be forced into change.
That's right. It is remarkable how even in the midst of difficult and trying circumstances, God continues to teach us and equip us for ways to be the church. Well, let me ask you one last question because our time is coming up here on 15 minutes. One last question. As you are preparing for this Sunday or you're looking down the road, what's something that you are most excited about with your
I,
congregation?
I am most excited to see how in this season, and it is just a season, but I am excited about how in this season that the people of God are still being blessed.
Mm.
And going into Mother's Day, one of the greatest joys is spending time with our mothers and with our families on this this day. Um, and there are going to be some challenges for people, but God is blessing and moving that they may not physically be able to go be with mom, but they can sit like we are now and celebrate. So I'm excited about, as we talked about the force change, I'm excited about how we're going to be changed and walk out after this better than we went into it.
Whew, that'll preach right there. To come out of this better than we were at the beginning. Uh,
Yes.
Friends, I hope you understand why we asked Abdue to do this time with us today. He's got a good word for all of us, and that's one for us to remember. I thank you for your time, my friend, uh,
Pleasure, brother.
and I pray for your ministry each and every day.
Thank you. Thank you.